So so I'm pretty sure a lot of you are like, oh man, Javier is really gonna tell us what to do here, how we're gonna approach religion these days. Well, I don't know if I can tell you guys, philosophers, how to approach religion correctly. But there's one thing that I think philosophy has probably spent too much time doing, and I think Samuel Barnes, I think Samuel Barnes actually brought this up. He said philosophy has spent so much time asking what is philosophy, but I would like to add a spin on that. I think philosophy has actually okay. This is how I'm going to phrase it. Philosophy has spent so much time asking what is philosophy that they should have just spent just as much time asking that question like what is religion. They should have spent just as much time asking that question like the way they ask what is philosophy. Um, and I'll admit, it irks me. It really irks me when we throw when I hear people just throw religion in the background or they critique religion. But the thing that bothers me is like, okay, but like, how are you defining it exactly? Like, what really is religion? What really is religion? And I feel, in my experience, this isn't the the common question. I mean, for all for crying out loud, we spend philosophers do so many books on what is philosophy, but I feel like what we don't do is enough books on what is religion. Really, what is religion? But instead, we'll critique religion as philosophers. We'll critique religion, um, which the job of philosophy towards religion has always played that role. But I think that actually, for me, that does not suffice to simply critique religion. Philosophy needs to bring something to the table, not just the critique of religion. Like I've disproved your God. Your God is illogical, so on. But I also hate the aspect of theology where they're so obsessed. They're so obsessed with proving a God, proving a God. The opposite side is so obsessed with proving not a God, proving as such. Whoever said that this was the correct way to approach anything? How did we get here? Well, historically, years and years of theological debates. I mean, it roots way back, way back. Even if you study Islamic history, I mean, they have debates between Christians, debates between Muslims themselves for so long. Um, it's historical. We've been doing this, right? Um, prove to me that you have the correct God and I don't. And still, philosophers still follow this in the same way. Except philosophers will be, they will basically say, I won't, because I don't really necessarily follow God, I'll just prove that you don't have one, or that your God is somehow flawed, or your argument is flawed. Um, and so I hate these type of debates, right? Because these are not discussions; these are debates, right? And I don't enjoy these at all. Like I cannot express how much I hate God arguments and how much I hate um, arguments against God. Like I hate both of them with equal passion. Um, and it's mainly because it's irresolvable. I mean, even when Christians and Muslims debate each other about Jesus being God, Jesus not being God, Jesus was a prophet, so on. There's no point. I mean, for me, there's no point in having this argument because ultimately, what ends up happening, and trust me, I've watched my fair share of theological arguments, and my goodness, it always it always goes from a philosophical position to then this very circular position where they're both pointing at specific parts of the same scripture or whatever, and it's two people arguing how they misinterpreted that. You know, you're just, they're all cherry picking parts of the scripture. They're I honestly, once the argument goes to the scripture, you it's done. Like, you're not, there is no more progress in that debate. There's going to be no more progress in that talk. It's done. It's done. It's just done. And I feel like philosophy has only critiqued religion, but has done nothing for religion. Now, we could argue that, well, philosophy, by critiquing religion, it does do something for religion. We could take that. But what I'm trying to say is that just critiquing religion doesn't it doesn't advance, in my opinion, it doesn't advance our being. I really feel like people critique religion and then just walk away, right? This is sort of Nietzschean, God is dead. Oh, God is dead. Well, okay, walk away, right? There's no, I don't feel as if there's any consequences for accepting this position. The thing is, there's consequences for accepting any position, really. Uh, I think a philosopher's duty towards religion is actually not to necessarily critique religion, but to actually answer the question fully: what is religion? I feel like that's a more it it's up there in priority, but I feel like philosophy needs to spend more time in answering what is religion, and then philosophy needs to dedicate a lot of time in deciphering and trying to understand religious experience. Okay, not disproving God, not critiquing the scripture as such. I mean, it's like they are helpful, but ultimately, I just don't find this. Uh, I don't really find these positions, like critiquing religion, as something that will benefit our knowledge, our understanding in any real way. It's just kind of like, well, I deconstructed their argument and I'm walking away now, right? I'm going to continue with my being, and the religious person will continue with his being. It's like deconstructing the argument does nothing. There's no advancement in being, like just nothing. Um, and that's why I feel like obviously Hegel is important, but because First of all, society isn't obsessed about the advancement of being. They think somehow that I'm going to make a device and then boom, I know all truth. And it's like, oh my God, this drives me insane. Um, I hate hearing technological arguments for like, well, we just haven't made the technology yet, so uh, we'll we'll discover this truth one day. We just don't have the technology yet. We just haven't discovered it yet. It's like, oh my God, there's so many assumptions within that whole fantasy. Uh, that's assuming you know how cognition works, right? And but anyways, I'm getting off topic. What I'm really trying to say is, I think, as I've observed, philosophy has mainly played a role in critiquing religion. But for me, it's not enough to critique religion. You need to do something that benefits religion in a way. Meaning, my notion of benefit is going to be trying to understand, trying to understand when people say or feel that they've encountered God, that they've had some mystical experience, that they've, how this is, I mean, this is a realm of knowledge, right? How is there such thing as religious knowledge? I mean, that's something that we have to ask. Um, and how do we properly distinguish between false religious knowledge, true religious knowledge? Is there such thing as true religious knowledge? And that's why the question, what is religion, needs to be uh, just as famous as what is why is there something rather than nothing, right? I actually, honestly, I loathe this question, um, because obviously it always makes room for the God position to surface. Um, but I think if we start the other way around, what is religion? Uh, I feel like that then it gets interesting. What really is religion? And then if we answer that question to some satisfaction, not that we would ever answer it fully, in my opinion, I don't know, then we can go into deciphering what is religious experience. What is religious knowledge? These are the things that philosophy can do for religion, really. If we are so-called lovers of wisdom, then it's not enough to simply critique religion. It's not enough to do this. Not at all. Not at all. If you claim to love wisdom, then religious knowledge is people that claim to have this kind of wisdom. So philosophy has to figure out a way that can discover or try to decipher what is religious knowledge, what is religious experience. And instead of obsessing over what is the question of what is philosophy, we need to start obsessing over what is religion. I mean, because I really feel like I don't see enough books about this. And this is why I like Samuel Barnes' tweet. He said, how many times will we see a book or a philosopher talk about what is philosophy? And that is so true. I have probably encountered a lot of philosophy books that say, what is philosophy? And I'm not hating on the question, but what I'm trying to say is, if only we spent as much time trying to answer that question with trying to answer what is religion. Because I feel like we're so obsessed with trying to answer what is philosophy that, and then we just throw religion in there. We just say, yeah, well, religion. I feel like religion half the time isn't really properly defined. But it's like a given as such that we don't define religion. So hi, Michelle. um, Michelle, if you have any questions, I can take it now. I can take it now. I won't take your Trinitarian questions though. um, but yeah, I think philosophy needs to do more than critique religion. I think philosophy needs to actually um, drive towards answering, like I said before, what is religion? What is religious experience? Is religious knowledge actually possible? How do we decipher between real religious knowledge and false religious knowledge? Um, the criteria for that. Is it possible that man actually has a faculty, a specific faculty of cognition for that? Um, what does that look like? I mean, there's so many questions about how to properly ask and decipher what is religion rather than just I feel like I see it too much. Like philosophers will critique religion and walk away. They're like, I did my job. I critique religion. That's the whole purpose, right? No, I don't think so. If you really are a so-called lover of wisdom, then you don't walk away. You advance being. You advance being in some type of fashion. Um, you look at the error, right? The critique of religion. Let's just say the critique of religion as an error, as an opening for truth. The real question is, what is that truth? What is that interpretation that people are saying is a experience of God as such, right? Um, and that's what I feel like Spinoza is probably like the first one that actually kind of did something in that fashion, but um, where he actually, I feel like he was like one of the first that actually critiqued the Bible in a sincere way, and then kind of advanced philosophy in that sense, along with religion, with his critique. But that's it. I think that really sums up my point for what philosophy should do, what philosophy's duty to do, um, and the other thing is, and this is just a side note. This is just a side note for how I feel about God arguments. I'm not a fan of God arguments. What I'm a fan of are arguments that talk about someone being capable of God, right? Either being capable of experiencing God, capable of knowing God, something of that sort. I'm interested in those arguments rather than arguments that prove or deny God's existence. I'm not interested in any of those arguments because they're just simply, it's to me, they're just childish. They're just straight up childish arguments, in my opinion, because it always goes into like some deep scientism. Yeah, it either goes into like some deep scientism or it falls into like some circular like religious scripture type of debate, and it's you get nowhere with that. You get nowhere with that. And it's you just get nowhere with that. And I hate it. I hate it so much. I really do. I really do hate it. I really hate it. I hate people that come to me and try to give me a God argument, and then I hate people that try to give me an anti-God argument. I really hate it. I'm not interested in these black and white propositions. Um, what I'm interested in is man capable? That's an interesting question. Is man capable? Is man capable of God? Because then that's not just a knowing, that's like an advancement in being. Like if I advance my being, really, yes, I appreciate your emphasis here. If I advance my being, does that increase my receptivity to know something? That's what I really want to know. Because there's lots of room to like discover something here. And what reminds me of when Muhammad Iqbal says the prophets, psychology would define the prophets as having some type of schizophrenia. But this is a good subject to study because it's like he raises the question: is it possible that having this sort of psychological condition, uh, it grants a certain receptivity? Like, what is that receptivity? How do we know? How do we distinguish a mad person between someone that actually knows something? And this is what I'm interested in, and I think this is what philosophy should be interested in. I feel like this is what's philosophy's duty to kind of ask and search for these questions, because that is something that philosophy can do. I think it's hard for theology to do that because, I mean, it's like someone saying, "Okay, tell me something bad about your mother." It's like, "Okay, I know something bad about my mother, but I'm not really feel comfortable telling you something bad about my mother." You know what I mean? It's kind of like that. And so that's why I feel like philosophy needs to be involved. You know, because here's the thing. When we leave it to the theologians to try to advance what is religion, what is religious experience, the problem with that is I feel that you always have that susceptibility to not want to critique what you love. And that's very difficult. It's very difficult to critique something that you love, right? Nobody really likes it when somebody else talks bad about your sibling or something else, right? It's very difficult. Uh, it's just very difficult unless you're in a state of anger, right? Um, then maybe you can accept it, but for the most part, when we love things, it's very hard to critique them, and we get rather defensive, and it just shows the emotional bond, right? The emotional attachment, because the person really does feel like they experienced something. They really feel like they experienced God, that something changed their lives. Well, that's what philosophy needs to freaking study. Like, what is religious experience? What is religion? How do we know that they know something? Rather than just looking at the God arguments and being like, well, this is a bad infinity. Oh. you know? you know, I hate those arguments. Like, God. It's like, oh my God, this is because this is just, it's not beneficial. The Christian's still going to believe in what they're going to believe, and the philosopher's still going to do what he's still going to do. So what are we doing? There's no advancement in being, and that's what upsets me. Uh, okay, I'm done ranting now. I'm calm. I'm calm. I'm calm. I'm okay. I'm okay. Like, yeah. You could probably say, like, I'm pretty sure some of you are listening like, well, what's his position? Like, does he believe in a God? Like, does he? I mean, look, my experience is this. I've read a lot of religious books. I've read the Bhagavad Gita. I've read what's that? I've read the Dhammapada, which is the Buddhist scripture. I've read the Quran. Okay. I've um yeah, like I've read the Quran in its entirety almost twice. And the Bible, the Bible is really hard for me to get into. I'm not gonna lie. I actually find the Quran way more entertaining because it's, the Bible. It's like you get all these narratives, and then I think there's like one section where it's like all genealogy. I think that's the part. But anyways, that's not important. What I'm trying to say is, I've had my taste of religious experience, and even I think there's actually a very funny moment where I even told my mother I was an atheist one time. Right? I actually believed. It was so funny because I think when I was Muslim, I think my mom had a harder time accepting that than when I had previously told her I was an atheist. So that's, uh, I don't know. That was really funny, but I think that's why sometimes I want to defend that religion, because even though I don't follow it personally, I feel like there is a huge gap, like just a ridiculous gap of misunderstanding, and misinterpretation that is so dangerous that I can't. I can't let it slide. I can't. I absolutely can't. Because it's just such a ridiculous gap of knowledge, and even like Muslims themselves, because they're born in the religion, they also lack the knowledge. So they don't even know how to. They don't even know their own religion. You can be confident to say that. Um, so, like it's crazy. The gap of understanding is wild. Um, so that's why sometimes I'm like, I feel responsible to spread the knowledge that I do have, um, just to clarify some misunderstandings in some way. But other than that, you know, I have quite the religious dippings, and that's it. So so again, just to reiterate that what is philosophy? If only philosophers had spent more time asking what is religion rather than asking what is philosophy, because I hate that question. What is philosophy? What is philosophy? That's like asking who is my mother? Is that mother really my mother? I'm just playing around now. I'm giving people a hard time. Is she really my mother? Um, um, David is like, I'm okay. Yeah, I know. I'm probably not okay. I love this discussion. So David says, I love this discussion. I believe it is important. The family analogy works well. Yeah. I mean, you have to admit, I feel like sometimes there is like some psychological condition, like some type of like paranoia, where you're just like, well, is that my mother? uh, and philosophy does sometimes dive into those aspects of like, well, hold on, what is philosophy? We need to ask this question. Um, which I mean, no doubt, it is an important question, but not so important that every philosopher in the world needed to write about what is philosophy and give their own take on what is philosophy. Um, so I don't know. That's just how I feel. I think Samuel Barnes said something along the same lines. Um, but I agree with him. I agree with him. I feel like it's a very stale question these days. Um, and I don't see enough talk about what is religion fully, even though we talk about it all the time, and we critique it all the time. But we don't really ask that question as much. Um, and there's only a couple philosophers that I know that do this, but they're all theologians. They all come from religious background. So what's the problem there? And I feel like philosophy needs to take up that responsibility and actually take those questions seriously. But I think that's enough. I'm getting out my anger now, David, so that way when we talk tomorrow, you know, um, I can just laugh. It will just be pure laughter, pure bliss, pure last man, very Nietzschean last man. I think we'll definitely have a fun time. We'll definitely have a fun time for sure. For sure, for sure. We shall, yes, we shall pursue the purity of joy tomorrow. Yes, absolutely. I am looking forward to it because tomorrow is going to be a rough day for me, my friend. I am going to be out there in the cold. I think it's gonna be like 16 degrees. We're gonna be on the shooting range, and I'm just gonna be like shooting my weapon for, annual qualifications. Even though I'm getting out in like 3 months, it doesn't matter in my opinion. But hey, um, gotta do what I gotta do, right? So I am definitely looking forward tomorrow, and it's gonna be fun. It's absolutely gonna be fun. And Michelle, yeah, you just keep laughing. Keep laughing. We're gonna dissect that tomorrow. Purity of joy. All right. So if none of you two have any questions, then I think I'll be getting off. So, but I'll wait a little bit just in case you guys have questions. But that was something I was going to tell you about Dawood. My experience of telling my mom that I was an atheist at one point in my life. Okay. Take care. Yes. Take care, Dawood. Thank you. All right. And I'm not gonna wait for Michelle because Michelle knows where to message me half the time. Michelle, you can email me. It's fine. I know you have questions. All right. You guys take care.